Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling as exhausted as if you had just run a marathon? Not because you talked too much, not because you did anything wrong, but simply because you felt too much. If that sounds familiar, then there is a good chance you have heard the same sentence your whole life. You are too sensitive. Maybe someone said that to you when you were little. When you got hurt by a comment that seemed harmless to everyone else, when you cried over a movie that other people watched just for fun, when you walked into a room and instantly felt the tension in the air before anyone even said a word. And then you started wondering if something was wrong with you. Why can everyone else move on so easily while you cannot? But pause for a second and really hear this. Maybe the problem is not that you are too weak. Maybe you simply experience the world more deeply than most people. Imagine the human brain like a camera. Most people are recording life in standard definition, clear enough to function, light enough that it does not overload the system. But some people are born with an 8K camera. They notice more details, they pick up more signals, and they feel emotions that other people do not even realize are there. It sounds like a gift, right? But this gift comes with a price. Because when you process more information, your nervous system gets tired faster too. That is why sometimes you feel completely drained without even knowing why. In this video, you're going to discover a truth that very few people ever tell you. Why sensitive people are more likely to become emotionally exhausted, what is really happening inside your brain, and why science shows that sensitivity is not the weakness you were taught to believe it is. But before we go any further, I want you to do one small thing. If you have ever been called too sensitive, subscribe to the channel right now, because this video might be the first time you hear the truth about who you really are. And trust me, what comes next may make you look back on your whole life in a completely different way. There is something very strange about sensitive people that almost no one talks about. They are often the people who understand others the best in the room, yet they are also the ones who feel the most exhausted when they leave that room. If you have ever wondered why a simple conversation can drain your energy, this part might reveal an uncomfortable truth. You may not be weak at all. Your brain may simply operate in a completely different way. Most people believe emotions are just a reaction. Someone says something, you feel a little sad, and then you move on. But for a sensitive person, emotions are not just a quick reaction. They are more like a slow-motion movie playing inside the mind. You do not only hear what someone says, you hear how they say it. You notice the pause in their sentence. You sense the hesitation in their voice. And before you even realize it, your brain has already started analyzing all of those signals. Imagine the brain like a data processing system. Most people are running about 10 programs at the same time. Not too heavy, not too stressful, but the brain of a sensitive person is different. It is like a computer with 50 browser tabs open at once. Each tab is a detail, a feeling, a tiny social signal that most people never notice. And when the system has to process too much data, something simple happens. It overheats, it slows down, and eventually it becomes exhausted. What is fascinating is that neuroscience has actually discovered a reason behind this. In the brains of sensitive people, the regions responsible for emotional processing and social awareness are more active than usual. This means that while other people see a simple situation, you see the entire story behind it. You read emotions in someone's eyes. You feel tension in the air. And sometimes you even notice things people are trying to hide. That is why you can walk into a room and immediately feel that something is wrong. No one says anything, but you sense it. And the funny thing is, if you mention this to other people, they might look at you as if you are imagining things. But you are not imagining anything. Your nervous system is simply more sensitive. There is a special type of brain cell called mirror neurons. They allow humans to feel what other people feel. But in sensitive people, this system seems to work almost at full power. That means when a friend of yours feels anxious, you do not just understand that they are anxious. You actually feel that tension in your own body. You become an emotional sponge in a world full of emotional puddles. And this is exactly where exhaustion begins. Because if you are constantly absorbing the emotions of others, your nervous system never truly gets a break. It is like a radar that is always on, always scanning, always analyzing, always alert. But there is an important question that few people ask. If this trait makes life so difficult, why has evolution kept it for thousands of years? The answer is surprisingly interesting. In ancient communities, humans often fell into two types. Some people acted quickly, took risks, and rushed into hunting or fighting. They were like the warriors of the tribe. But if a tribe only had warriors, they would quickly run into trouble. They also needed observers, people who could detect danger before it happened. Those people were the sensitive ones. They were the tribe's early warning system. They noticed subtle changes in the environment. They sensed tension in the group. They saw details others missed. So, what modern society calls being too sensitive was once a survival advantage. But there is one problem. The modern world is nothing like the ancient world. We no longer live in quiet forests where only a few signals appear each day. We live in a noisy world. Phones vibrate constantly. Negative news is everywhere. Social media pushes hundreds of emotional signals into your mind every single day. For most people, the brain can filter out much of this noise. But for a sensitive person, that filter is weaker. This means your nervous system is forced to process an enormous amount of stimulation every day. That is why sometimes you feel exhausted without knowing why. You are not working harder than everyone else. You are simply feeling more. And here is the part many sensitive people do not want to hear, but need to hear. If you keep trying to live exactly like everyone else, ignoring the needs of your nervous system, you will always feel drained. Not because you are weak, but because you are trying to live in an environment that was not designed for the way your brain works. But before you think this is some kind of sentence you cannot escape, listen to this. Because in the next part, we are going to talk about a fascinating concept in psychology called the orchid effect. And once you understand this idea, you may realize that your sensitivity is not the burden you thought it was. But before we continue, if you have been listening this far and feel like someone just perfectly described how your brain works, subscribe to the channel right now. Because what comes next may completely change the way you see yourself. There is a truth that many sensitive people take years to realize. What exhausts you is not life itself. It is the fact that you have been trying to live as someone you are not. You have tried to appear tougher, colder, and less emotional, just to fit into a world designed for people who do not feel everything so deeply. And then you wonder why you are always tired. But think about it in a different way. In nature, there are two very famous types of plants. Some plants are like dandelions. They can grow almost anywhere, on sidewalks, in cracks between rocks, even in the harshest places. But there are also plants like orchids. An orchid cannot survive on a sidewalk. Put it in a harsh environment and it will quickly wither. But when it is placed in the right environment, with the right light and the right conditions, it blooms into something that a dandelion could never produce. There is a good chance that you are the second kind. And the problem is not that you are too sensitive. The problem is that you have been trying to live on the sidewalk for far too long. Your sensitivity is not a system flaw. It is a highly refined radar system. It allows you to read emotions, notice subtle details, and understand people on a level that many others may never reach. So the next time someone tells you that you are too sensitive, just smile quietly. Because you know something they do not. You are not weak. You simply see the world in higher resolution. If this story made you feel understood, subscribe to the channel right now. And if you realize that you are the sensitive one in your life, stay with this channel. Because the next videos may help you understand your brain in a way that no one has ever explained before.